What if I told you that behind the screaming guitars and explosive stage lights, some of heavy metal's biggest icons were fighting a silent, deadly battle? They lived fast, broke every rule, and became legends. But the disease they carried didn't care about fame or rebellion. In the shadows of fame, AIDS took the lives of some of the genre's most talented voices, men who defined an era yet met tragic ends far too soon. Some tried to hide their illness, others were ostracized by an industry that didn't understand. Their stories are heartbreaking, powerful, and often forgotten. These are 20 famous heavy metal stars who lost their lives to AIDS. 20. Michael Alago. Michael Alago wasn't a singer or guitarist, yet his name became legendary in the world of heavy metal. As a music executive, he was the man who discovered Metallica when they were just another loud band trying to make their mark. He helped shape the raw, rebellious energy that defined the metal sound of the 80s. Behind the flashing lights, though, Michael carried a secret battle that had nothing to do with music. At the height of his success, he was diagnosed with AIDS. It was a terrifying time when even mentioning the disease brought fear and judgment. Instead of letting it destroy him, Michael fought back with courage and honesty. He survived when many others didn't, becoming a voice for truth in an industry that preferred silence. His story reminds the world that AIDS didn't only take singers and drummers. It also struck the people behind the scenes who built the sound of an era. Michael's journey stands as proof that heavy metal's spirit isn't just about loud guitars. It's about surviving the impossible. 19. Joby Harrison. Joby Harrison was never a household name, but in the smoky clubs of Los Angeles, every guitarist knew his beat. He drummed for several underground heavy metal bands in the late 80s, often filling in when others burned out. His passion for rhythm and his wild personality made him unforgettable on stage. Off stage, though, Joby was hiding something that even his closest friends didn't understand. When the AIDS crisis swept through the music world, it hit the underground scene hard. Joby was one of its many silent victims. By the time people realized how sick he was, it was already too late. Without the fame or money of big stars, his passing barely made the papers. But among those who knew him, Joby's death became a painful reminder that AIDS didn't care about fame, fortune, or talent. It took anyone it touched, including the ones history forgot. 18. Klaus Nomi. Klaus Nomi was one of those rare artists who looked like he had stepped out of another world. With his dramatic costumes, painted face, and haunting voice that could move from opera to rock in a single breath, he became a true icon of performance art. Though not a pure heavy metal star, his bold theatrical style deeply influenced the glam metal look that exploded in the 80s. Bands like Mötley Crüe and Twisted Sister carried a piece of his fearless energy, but while Klaus dazzled the stage, his health was crumbling in silence. In the early years of the AIDS epidemic, there was no real understanding of what the disease was, only fear and rumors. Klaus became one of the first public figures to die from AIDS complications in the music scene. His loss sent a quiet shock through the artistic world. Even in his final days, he performed with an almost supernatural calm, wearing his famous tuxedo-like costume as if preparing for one last curtain call. Klaus Nomi left too soon, but his courage in facing AIDS gave his art even deeper meaning. 17. John Balance. John Balance, the creative mind behind the experimental band Coil, lived in the darker corners of sound. His music blended mystery, emotion, and chaos qualities that later inspired many industrial and metal artists. Behind his creativity, though, was a man battling his own demons, and AIDS became one of them. The disease haunted his life quietly, like a shadow following him through every stage performance and recording session. During the 90s, when AIDS was still whispered about with shame, John's health declined, yet he never stopped creating. He poured his fear and sadness into his music, turning pain into haunting beauty. His songs almost felt like a confession, layered with grief and hidden messages about mortality. When AIDS finally claimed his life, it wasn't just a loss for his fans. It was a loss for all of heavy music's experimental side. John's story reminds everyone that AIDS didn't only silence performers. It also took away the dreamers who dared to make music that didn't fit the rules. 16. Mark Ashton. Mark Ashton might not have had the fame of rock gods, but his work with Rare Bird in the '70s influenced a generation of musicians who later helped shape progressive and heavy metal sounds. He was a quiet visionary who believed in deep, emotional music over commercial hits. Yet, behind that creative calm, he faced a growing fear that few around him could imagine. When he learned that he had AIDS, Mark's world changed completely. Back then, the disease wasn't just deadly, it was isolating. People turned away, careers vanished, and the music world preferred to stay silent. Instead of chasing the spotlight, Mark stepped back, spending his last years surrounded by memories of the songs he helped create. His death barely made headlines, but among those who knew him, it left a space. AIDS took not only his life, but also the beautiful music he might have still given to the world. 15. Tommy Morrison. Tommy Morrison was known first as a boxing champion, but his wild lifestyle, charm, and larger-than-life personality made him a favorite among the rock and metal crowd. He partied with bands, appeared in music videos, and lived the chaotic life of fame that mirrored heavy metal's spirit, fast, loud, and reckless. But behind the muscles and bravado, a dangerous truth was hidden. When Tommy tested positive for AIDS, he denied it for years, saying it was all a mistake. He tried to keep fighting, both in the ring and in life, but the disease eventually caught up to him. His body weakened, and the same energy that once thrilled crowds faded away. His story shows how AIDS didn't care about image or strength it could take, even those who seemed invincible. In the end, Tommy's life became a tragic example of how denial only makes the fall harder. 14. Cyril Kaz Reeder. Cyril Kaz Reeder was one of Europe's rising thrash guitarists during the late '80s. His solos were fast, furious, and full of life. Metal fans across Germany and the UK saw him as the next big name ready to break through. But just as his band was gaining attention, he disappeared from the scene without warning. Months later, rumors spread that he had fallen ill, and soon after, word came that he had died from AIDS complications. In those days, AIDS was treated like a curse no one wanted to mention. The metal world moved on quickly, and Kaz's name slipped into silence. His bandmates spoke of him with love, but also regret. They knew he never got the chance to live out his dream. His death was a chilling reminder that the disease reached every corner of the music world, even the loudest and most defiant one. Cyril Reeder's fire burned bright, but AIDS extinguished it too soon. 13. Howard E. Scott. Howard E. Scott wasn't your typical heavy metal name, but his sound carried the fire that later shaped many rock and metal bands. As a founding member of the group War, his guitar work mixed raw rhythm with a heavy punch that influenced musicians far beyond his genre. Behind the music, though, Scott's life took a darker turn as he began facing serious health struggles tied to AIDS. In the '80s, when AIDS was spreading silently, many artists hid their illness, afraid of losing fans or being rejected. Howard's strength and talent began to fade, but he never stopped performing until his body gave out. His passing left a quiet void in the music world. He might not have worn leather jackets or painted his face like metal legends, but his sound helped pave the way for them. AIDS took his life, but it couldn't erase his lasting influence on the rhythm and soul that helped build heavy rock. 12. Alexis Korner. Alexis Korner was often called the father of British blues rock, and his influence reached deep into heavy metal's roots. Without him, bands like Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath might never have found their sound. But even as his students conquered the world, Alexis faced a battle of his own. In his later years, he became one of the quiet victims of the AIDS epidemic that swept through musicians of every genre. He never talked about it publicly, perhaps out of pride or fear of misunderstanding. Back then, AIDS was surrounded by stigma, and even legendary figures faced silence instead of support. When Alexis passed away, the world mourned a musical pioneer, but few knew the truth behind his death. His story reminds us that AIDS didn't only take lives, it stole voices that built entire generations of sound. Alexis Korner's name remains in rock history, even if his private pain was hidden from view. 11. Dino Valentine. Dino Valentine was a rising name in New York's underground metal scene during the late '80s. He had a voice that could cut through walls, powerful, raw, and unforgettable. His band was close to signing a record deal when he fell ill. At first, everyone thought it was exhaustion from touring, but the truth was far more painful. Dino had contracted AIDS, and back then, that diagnosis felt like a death sentence. As the disease progressed, his energy disappeared, his body weakened, and the band slowly fell apart. He refused to let the public see him in that condition, spending his final months away from the stage he loved. Dino's death didn't make headlines, but those who saw him perform still remember his passion. AIDS didn't just stop his life. It robbed the world of a talent that could have taken heavy metal in a whole new direction. His story remains one of the many that faded before the world was ready to listen. 10. Sylvester Johnson. Sylvester Johnson was one of those names that floated through every recording studio in Los Angeles during the 80s. He wasn't famous, but he played with everyone from small local bands to big touring acts that needed a fill-in guitarist. His skill was undeniable, and his electric riffs added life to songs that crowds loved. Yet, like so many behind-the-scenes artists, his personal life was falling apart. When Sylvester learned he had AIDS, he kept it a secret. He feared that the rock scene, known for its tough image, would turn its back on him. As his health declined, he stopped showing up to gigs and eventually disappeared from the spotlight. Only after his death did close friends reveal the truth. His name never made magazine covers, but his fingerprints were all over the sound of that era. AIDS took Sylvester Johnson before he ever got the recognition he deserved, leaving behind a silence that spoke louder than his guitar ever could. 9. Joey Ramone. Joey Ramone may have been known as a punk icon, but his music inspired many in the heavy metal community. His fearless attitude, raw sound, and stage presence influenced countless metal performers who came after him. Yet, behind the rebellious image, Joey lived with quiet vulnerability. While his public cause of death was listed as lymphoma, close circles whispered that he had also struggled with AIDS during his final years. Whether those rumors were true or not, his story still reflects the fear and secrecy that surrounded AIDS in the music industry. Joey kept performing until the very end, his voice filled with the same energy that started a revolution. When he passed away, the punk and metal worlds mourned together. AIDS had already taken too many, and Joey's decline reminded everyone how fragile even the loudest voices could be. His legacy lived on, proving that no disease could silence the spirit that fueled rock's wildest generation. 8. Ian Evans. Before Ian Evans became known for his later work with Lynyrd Skynyrd, he played in several underground metal and hard rock groups during the early 80s. His heavy bass lines carried a raw energy that blended perfectly with the aggressive sound of the era. Those who heard him live said he played like a storm, fierce yet precise. But while the crowd saw only his power, Ian was living through the fear that swept across the music world as AIDS began claiming lives. Though official records list cancer as his cause of death, close friends always spoke of earlier health battles tied to the AIDS crisis that surrounded musicians of that time. Like many, he kept quiet, afraid of losing respect or work. As his strength faded, he still played every show he could, determined to live through his art. When Ian finally passed, the metal world lost another quiet soldier whose struggles were hidden behind amplifiers and stage lights. His connection to the AIDS generation reminds everyone how fragile even the strongest performers truly were. 7. Jobriath Boone. Long before the glitter and makeup of 80s glam metal, there was Jobriath Boone, a performer decades ahead of his time. He was bold, theatrical, and openly gay in an industry that wasn't ready to accept it. His stage shows mixed opera, rock, and pure drama, inspiring the visual style that bands like Poison and Twisted Sister later turned into heavy metal spectacle. But Jobriath paid a heavy price for his honesty. As fame faded, he retreated into small clubs and apartments, living quietly while AIDS began to sweep through the artistic world. When he was diagnosed, there was no cure, little compassion, and even less understanding. Jobriath died in 1983, one of the first openly gay musicians to be taken by AIDS. His death became a symbol of both tragedy and courage. Though his name isn't shouted in metal halls, his style and fearlessness live on in every performer who dares to be different. 6. Tom Fogerty. Tom Fogerty, best known for his work with Creedence Clearwater Revival, might seem far from heavy metal, but his gritty guitar tones influenced countless metal musicians. After leaving the band, Tom continued performing and experimenting with heavier sounds. In the late 70s, a simple medical procedure changed his life forever. During a blood transfusion, he was unknowingly infected with HIV, which would later lead to AIDS. For years, he kept performing, refusing to let the illness define him. As his health worsened, he still showed up to recording sessions, trying to squeeze every ounce of music out of his remaining time. When Tom died in the early 90s, the music community mourned quietly, not just for him, but for what his death represented, the terrifying reach of AIDS into every corner of the industry. His story proved that even the most respected musicians weren't safe from a disease that showed no mercy. 5. Eric Carr. Eric Carr joined Kiss at a time when the band needed fresh fire. His thunderous drumming and humble personality won fans instantly. On stage, he looked unstoppable, the heartbeat of a band built on spectacle. Off stage, Eric's health began to fail. Officially, the story told was cancer, but over time, industry whispers suggested something darker, that complications from AIDS played a role in his decline. Whether true or not, Eric's struggle mirrored the fear of the late 80s, when AIDS was taking lives faster than anyone could understand. He continued performing until he could no longer stand behind his drum kit. His final recordings carried the same energy he'd always brought, even as his body weakened. When Eric Carr passed, millions mourned him without ever knowing the full truth. AIDS had become a word few dared to speak, and his silence became part of the tragedy that surrounded that era. 4. Paul Bailoff. Paul Bailoff, the fiery frontman of Exodus, embodied everything that made thrash metal explosive. His voice wasn't just singing, it was war. Fans loved his raw energy and his wild personality, but that same intensity also fueled a lifestyle filled with danger. During the chaotic years of touring and excess, Paul's health began to fail. Behind the scenes, AIDS was spreading through the music world, often unnoticed until it was too late. As his illness grew worse, Paul tried to keep up with the band's relentless pace. The once unstoppable shouter became weaker, but he refused pity. His final performances carried the same rage that made him famous, even as his body gave out. When he passed away, his bandmates and fans were heartbroken. AIDS had taken yet another voice from heavy metal's loudest generation, leaving behind silence where there should have been screams. 3. Randy Castillo. Randy Castillo's drumming could shake a stadium. Playing with Ozzy Osbourne and later Mötley Crüe, he was known for his wild solos and unstoppable energy. To fans, he looked invincible, a symbol of strength and rebellion. But Randy carried a secret that even close friends didn't fully know. He had been living with AIDS, quietly fighting a disease that tore apart his health while he kept smiling on stage. In a world where showing weakness meant losing everything, he chose silence. As his body weakened, rumors spread about his sudden absences and hospital visits. When the truth came out after his death, fans were stunned. AIDS had taken one of the greatest drummers of his time. Yet, even in death, Randy's legacy remained electric. His courage to keep performing in silence showed that heavy metal's true strength wasn't only in volume, it was in heart. 2. Robin Crosby. Robin Crosby was once the face of glam metal's wildest days. As the lead guitarist of Rat, he lived the dream: endless tours, gold records, and a lifestyle filled with fame, fortune, and excess. Fans loved his flashy style and big smile, but behind the glitter, Robin was slowly falling apart. Drugs became his escape, and with that reckless lifestyle came dangerous choices that changed his life forever. In the 90s, he was diagnosed with AIDS, a secret he carried until he could no longer hide his illness. The disease ate away at his strength, leaving a man who had once owned the stage barely able to stand. He spoke openly about his regrets, calling AIDS his final consequence for years of living too fast. When he died, the metal world was heartbroken. Robin Crosby's story showed how fame and destruction often walk hand in hand, and how AIDS didn't care how loud your music was. it could silence even the brightest star. 1. Freddie Mercury. Freddie Mercury wasn't just a rock legend, he was a force of nature. With his electrifying voice and magnetic stage presence, he took Queen to heights few bands ever reached. Behind the dazzling performances, though, Freddie was fighting a secret battle that would define the end of his life. Diagnosed with AIDS in the late 80s, he chose to keep it private, refusing pity and focusing on what he loved most: music. While his body weakened, his spirit refused to break. He recorded until his final days, delivering haunting songs that still move millions. When he finally revealed his illness, it was only a day before he passed away. His death shocked the world and forced many to see AIDS not as a shameful secret, but as a devastating reality that could touch anyone, even their heroes. Freddie Mercury's courage turned tragedy into awareness, and his voice continues to echo long after AIDS took him away. Their music may have faded, but their impact still echoes through every riff, every lyric, every scream that defines heavy metal. These artists lived loud, loved hard, and faced battles most fans never saw. So the next time you blast your favorite metal track, remember the souls who gave everything to the sound you love. Which of these stars' stories hit you the hardest? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell, because more untold stories of rock and metal are coming your way.